CTV News at 5 with Hudson Mack.
Following the weekend tragedy, Victoria firefighters are echoing what George's father said, urging you to make sure that you have working smoke alarms and that you check them often. Firefighters say new homes are being built with more synthetic materials these days. They burn at a higher temperature, considerably hotter. They say early detection is the key, and so is an escape plan. They advise you to test your smoke alarms at least once a month and the batteries at least once a year.
Smoke alarms allow you to get out faster. When you hear that the alarm goes off, they call it your nose at night, because when you're sleeping you don't have a sense of smell. So the earlier you find out, detect a fire, the earlier you can get out. As we know, as a fire advances in its stages, especially with the new construction, with all that we're building with now, the fire behavior is a lot faster than it was in the past.
It's also important to make sure that you have the proper type of alarm for each section of your home. Smoke is the killer. The Victoria Fire Department has started a campaign to provide and to install smoke alarms for people who may not have access to one. A stretch of Souk Road was closed this morning after a logging truck rolled over, spilling about 25 tons of logs and 50 liters of diesel fuel. Happened just after 7 o'clock this morning. The logging truck was eastbound on Souk Road near Gillespie. When it flipped over, the logs spilled down the embankment and the diesel fuel spilled across the roadway. Fire crews say this is the same place where a car went off the road just last week and where another logging truck lost its load a couple of years ago.
Is it the design of the road? Is it something engineering's going to have to look at, or people just going too fast? I'm sure there's always more than one reason. Murphy's Law just seems to come and play in this area a lot more than anywhere else.
This is a common area for accidents. Unfortunately, it's a high crash zone, mainly due to speed. And this is one area, there's lots of signs warning people to slow down, and this is one area where they want to pay attention to those signs.
The driver of the truck walked away without injury. Emergency crews say it is fortunate that no other vehicles or pedestrians were in the area at the time. Crews were able to contain the spilled fuel before it could contaminate a stream nearby. RCMP are still investigating the cause of the accident, but are not recommending charges. BC's Jobs Minister Pat Bell will not be running in May's election for health reasons, but he says renewal could be good for the Liberals. In December, Bell was diagnosed with a rare aneurysm, and he says he needs to take time off because the next 4 years are uncertain, and he needs to focus instead on his recovery.
One of the most challenging decisions for anyone when they're faced with a health challenge is when you should continue on in your existing career or not. I have loved my 12 years in politics. It's been very interesting. I think we've accomplished lots. I was looking forward to another 4 years. But when you're faced with the uncertainty of what the future is going to bring, you have to think about, can you do the job for your constituents? And for me, in the end, it was not knowing what the next 4 years would bring that caused me to rethink the issue and whether or not I should run again.
The MLA for Prince George Mackenzie says he believes there are strong candidates to fill his shoes, and he's confident in his decision to leave. Bell says he'll stay in his current role until the May election and says he intends to try to resolve various problems in his ministry, including the temporary foreign workers program, before he leaves the post. There was a big surprise this morning for the people of Venezuela. Their flamboyant and very sick President Hugo Chavez returned home to rousing headlines. Chavez had been in Cuba for the last 70 days undergoing cancer treatment. He was away and was silent for more than 2 months. His return and the publicity surrounding it is considered hugely political. Many expect that he has come home to step down or die, setting the stage for his successor. The U.S. Coast Guard says tonight the engine room fire on board the Carnival Triumph was accidental. Investigators have determined it was caused by a leak in a fuel oil return line. The engine room fire paralyzed the huge ship last week, leaving it adrift in the Gulf of Mexico with more than 4,200 people on board until tugboats finally towed it to shore in Alabama. The Maritimes are being hit by another major winter storm. Police across Atlantic Canada are warning of hazardous conditions in the region. Thousands of homes are without power. Many schools in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia were closed for the day today, probably will be tomorrow. And hundreds of flights have been cancelled into and out of Halifax and St. John's. The Saanich man says many of the children who died in residential schools could have been saved. His great-grandfather alerted the government to the appalling health conditions in the schools more than a century ago. Andrew Bryce's great-grandfather was the health officer for the Department of the Interior in the early 1900s. He wrote a report in 1907 on the health conditions in the residential schools. He estimated that 24% of all residential school children had communicable diseases, mostly tuberculosis. Bryce says even after that revelation, nothing was done.
He was actually hired in 1904 because of the health issues regarding residential schools. So I just shake my head that we're still talking about this 106 years later. It should have been dealt with 100 years ago.
Bryce is currently researching his family history for his master's thesis. He says he also believes the number of dead will rise, given the numbers in his great-grandfather's report. A hang glider pilot whose passenger plummeted to her death last year made an appearance in court today. John Orders is facing a charge of criminal negligence causing death in the death of 27-year-old Lanami Godinez-Avila, who plunged 300 meters to her death last April. Orders is accused of failing to properly tether her into her hang glider before taking off. He also faces a charge of obstructing justice, accused of swallowing a memory card containing video footage of the doomed flight. Saanich police are investigating again after more than a dozen vehicles were broken into in the Gordon Head neighborhood. Smash and grabs Friday night and Saturday morning. Police remind you to lock your vehicles and remove even loose change or any mobile devices or anything else that might appeal to someone who'd smash the window and take it and try to fence it for a profit. If you know anything about the most recent break-ins or any, there's been a rash this year, you're asked to contact Saanich Police.